Well, it's not just missiles and anti-personnel mines to Ukraine. They are shoveling as much of your money out the door as fast as humanly possible, really, until Trump takes over. They just sent another $275 million in new weapons. I should probably point out, as many others and as I have before, that U.S. weapons stockpiles are so low that our own units don't have what they need. But hey, you already get the game. We just talked about it. Joining me now, Aaron Flint, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, veteran, Iraq, Afghanistan, host of Montana Talks. Colonel, honestly, the stories I hear about units and how low they are on their own gear here, and then every day I open up my phone and I see another $200 million in slush fund stuff for Ukraine, and I'm just floored, Colonel. I'm floored at how fast this is happening.
Well, first off, Jesse, just call me Aaron. It's an honor to be on here with you. Thanks for your service and sacrifice, and all your viewers as well. Let me put a little Montana spin on this for you, too. You talk about they are emptying every piggy bank they can possibly empty before Donald Trump takes office in January 20th. And yeah, here they didn't even want to give Joe Biden the keys to the car for the presidential race, but yet here he is, potentially getting us on the brink of World War III. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of our listeners back here in Montana. But, one of the things that we've had here in the news here recently is we've had nearly 700 miners that work for the Stillwater mine here in Montana. It's a platinum and palladium mine here in Montana. They were laid off recently. And think about this. Despite this war with Russia and Ukraine, this administration has allowed the Russians to dump their products into U.S. markets. And now we've got miners here in Montana that are out of work. And guess what? The federal Department of Labor isn't doing squat for these miners practically. Our state Department of Labor is helping out these laid off miners. But where is the federal Department of Labor? Apparently they're out of money right now. But yet we see all of our money going to Ukraine and all these other countries around the world, woke projects in South America, you name it. And it's an extra slap in the face to these miners who just got told that they were losing their jobs.
Golly. Aaron, you spent some time in the belly of the beast. Tell us about this defense industry. It's something I've talked about several times on this show before, but this cabal of politicians, flag officers, and then the defense contractor thing, people really don't grasp what big business this stuff actually is and how much money's at stake.
Well, so, I'm a National Guard, Army Reserve guy. So I would get deployed overseas, come back home to my radio show back here in Montana, did some TV time as well. So I may not have the experience inside the belly of the beast as much as some others out there, but let's look at it from just the perspective of, we had a liberal Senator, John Tester, here in Montana. He campaigned for office way back in 2006. He campaigned against the national deficit and the national debt. Well, what was it back then? It was about $6 trillion. Now we're approaching $36 trillion. He campaigned against the war in Iraq. He made it sound like he was this kind of anti-war politician, anti-war candidate. Well, 3 terms later, we finally kicked him to the curb here a couple of weeks ago in the November elections. But yet, did this guy do anything to prevent these forever wars that have been plaguing this country in the past couple of decades? And so I think the biggest challenge right now is, look, I have listeners ask me, hey, our kids are about to graduate high school. Should we encourage them to join the U.S. military? Now, I think the answer to that question is going to be a lot different with a Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, who's about to be back in there. If we can get Pete Hegseth in as Secretary of Defense, I think Uncle Jimbo, Jim Hansen, just laid it out very well. He's the former Black5.net blogger. He's got an incredible military background, but I think he laid out an effective case for how Pete Hegseth can not only combat the woke DEI nonsense that's been harming military recruitment efforts and led to a decline in military readiness right now. But I think Uncle Jimbo also talked about how somebody like a Pete Hegseth can combat this forever wars military industrial complex that just wants to keep fighting the same war over and over and over again. But to that question that I get from our listeners, they're saying, Aaron, would you encourage our kids to join the military right now with this woke nonsense and the punishment in the last 3.5 years, kicking troops to the curb because of the COVID shot? There's a lot of people who said, I would not do it. I would not tell my sons and daughters to join. But I think if we get some new blood in there, some new leadership with somebody like a Pete Hegseth, and of course with a Commander-in-Chief Donald J. Trump, I think we're going to start to see a surge in recruitment. I think we're going to start to see those ranks start to restore, especially from Middle America, home to some incredible patriots that have served for several generations in many of these families out here.
Including Montana. Aaron, by the way, I have to ask, I saw a report yesterday about Tren de Aragua. Everyone knows about them taking over places in Colorado. They're, of course, here in Texas. Allegedly, that scumbag who killed Laken Riley in Georgia was part of it, but they're in Montana, too? Are you seeing this? What's going on?
It's crazy. Of course, no surprise for us. I think people were shocked to hear the news. The New York Post had the report on Tuesday that, the Department of Homeland Security, in a memo that came out, 2 weeks ago? What else happened 2 weeks ago? Oh, the elections. Why didn't this memo get put out prior to the elections so that Americans knew just how big of a threat TDA, Tren de Aragua, is to the entire country? So shocked, but again, not surprised. Why are we not surprised that Tren de Aragua is in Montana? Well, first off, because the Mexican drug cartels have been in Montana. They've been taking advantage of our wide open southern border. The Mexican drug cartels have already been operating here for quite some time now. The former head of the DEA in Montana has joined me on the radio going back several years talking about how the drug cartels were particularly targeting our Native American reservations here across the state. We had a tribal leader from Northeast Montana, from the Fort Peck Tribal Council, testify that the Mexican drug cartels were deliberately targeting Native American women, and then they wanted to marry into the families so they could further embed in our communities, so they could push fentanyl and meth on our reservation communities in particular. So it's led to a huge uptick in crime all across the state, but especially on our reservations. But then now you've got Tren de Aragua. I spoke with a former DHS advisor earlier this morning, and he was telling me about how you will start to see wars take out between Tren de Aragua and the Mexican drug cartels, turf battle style wars for money, wars for the drug money, et cetera. So that's what we're kind of anticipating now is, okay, how is that going to tick up the violence even more? Just last week, for example, Belgrade, Montana, which is a small town outside of Bozeman, Montana. Now, most of your viewers would consider Bozeman, Montana to be a small town as well. Just last week, there was a man shooting at police officers in Belgrade, Montana. Now, the local news media didn't bother to include this in their reporting. I checked the Gallatin County jail roster. If you look at the Gallatin County jail roster, that man is on an ICE hold. He is on an immigration detainer for ICE. Most of these ICE holds, we've had a lot of them in our jails across Montana, are typically because these are illegal aliens committing crimes here in Montana. Wrong way drunk driving down the interstate, fentanyl dealing. This guy in Belgrade, Montana, shooting at the cops, and he's on an ICE hold now. And in the local media, these TV stations, some of the other print outlets, they don't even think that that's relevant to include the immigration status of these criminals that are committing violent crimes, raping young women in the downtown college area, in a big college town. And so, but back to TDA, Tren de Aragua. Look, Aurora, Colorado. I'm in Billings, Montana right now. 7-8 hour drive to Denver, depending on the traffic once you get there, right? So this Tren de Aragua, this violent Venezuelan prison gang that was taking over entire apartment complexes, is just less than a day's drive away from Montana. And so no surprise that Tren de Aragua, of course, has already established a presence here in Montana. You're seeing Venezuelans, you're seeing so-called refugees. And of course, we use the air quotes because the Biden administration has been handing out the refugee sticker to anybody practically. They've been abusing the refugee process, abusing the asylee process. So whatever status they're given, we know the threat is here.
No doubt. Aaron, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.